you're helping. Hi, I'm Phil. Welcome to Pretty Good Cooking.
Pretty good.
Tonight on the show, I'm going to teach you how to make a sandwich. And it's a sandwich that's so simple that I actually just think of it as a sandwich. Specifically, we'll be making a turkey and Swiss sandwich. This will be done somewhat in a deli style, but really the reason that I want to make this tonight is if you put a little bit of effort or attention to detail, you can take what is a fairly unexciting meal and make it something that tastes pretty good. I personally, in the past, really didn't like sandwiches as a category, almost. I thought it was very boring. But there is a role of the sandwich in many people's diets. It's a fairly accessible thing to make. You can make a reasonably healthy one. It's very portable. I think that's one of the biggest value propositions for sandwiches is you can eat them just about anywhere. I've made a lot of sandwiches in my life, usually for other people. And my wife, Courtney, likes these sandwiches enough that she specifically sometimes will ask, can you make those good sandwiches? So I want to teach you how I make those good sandwiches. Also, I thought it would be funny to just do an episode on sandwiches. And lastly, but also importantly, John needed an episode that's relatively quick to edit. So this is that episode. The first step, typically you eat sandwiches at lunch and therefore you should not be drinking a Moscow Mule, but it's not lunch, so that's okay. I can't stop drinking out of this copper cup. I'm just really, digging the copper poisoning or whatever. It is unlined. Okay, let's make that sandwich. A sandwich starts with bread. If there's not bread, is it a sandwich? Oh, and by the way, let me take this moment to publicly denounce and condemn the common discussion item of is X a sandwich or not? It's almost it's not a philosophical question, but people love to say like, is a taco a sandwich? Etc. I'm not interested in arguing the definitions of what is or is not a sandwich, but I can tell you with 100% certainty that what we're making today is a sandwich. If it wasn't a sandwich, we wouldn't call it that. I personally like whole wheat bread. This is honey oat wide pan bread from the Kroger private selection. I often go for this because it's often cheap and sometimes free. That's right, sometimes Kroger sends me coupons and is like, hey, Phil, you want some free bread? And I'm like, well, not gonna say no. I like the wide pan because you get more sandwich. If you look at conventional bread, it's probably like this. It's probably more of a square. And also, it's important to know, as sometimes sandwiches are consumed after the fact, that wide pan bread is roughly the length of a sandwich bag. I don't know why that's important to know, but it is. I personally like my sandwich bread toasted. However, if you're not going to eat the sandwich in prompt fashion, you may not want to toast it. Also, alternatively, if you are going to eat that sandwich later, maybe you could toast the bread and then let it cool before you put it in the bag. But don't put a hot toast bread in a sandwich bag because it'll get soggy. Let's toast the bread. I like a medium toast on my bread, which is why I have it set to the center of the dial. Even middle of the road brownness. Now, while that's toasting, we can work on other things. If you're making more than one sandwich, such as we are today, you'll want to prep some of the ingredients. Here I have a fancy tomato. The quality of the tomato is important. However, it's not necessary for it to be the best tomato you've ever had. In reality, sometimes we don't have the best tomatoes, and that's life. I love all tomatoes, good ones and bad ones. It's true, I really do. Using a knife, after you've washed your tomato, go ahead and slice the tomato. You can see here, we've got some rawness in the middle. I couldn't have known that when I got this tomato. That kind of sucks. We really don't want that, but we'll make do. So I'm gonna slice this tomato. As we go through towards the bottom of the tomato, it should be more ripe. So you can see with this one, it doesn't have that shittiness. So hopefully we can get enough slices out of the ripe portion of this tomato. If you do have a less than ideal tomato, try to cut it as thin as possible. If you thin cut a tomato, it will minimize the undesirable texture. Okay, I've got some slices of tomato. And my toast is done, but I'm just gonna leave it on the toaster for now. Next, I will prepare the lettuce. This is some hydroponic lettuce from Chicago or something. I don't know, I got it at the Whole Foods. Sometimes this hydroponic lettuce is so clean it doesn't feel like a real food. So the texture might be a little different, but that's fine. Some people will tell you to like thoroughly dry the lettuce. I'm not really sensitive to that, but you do risk adding some sogginess to your Sammy if you don't dry the lettuce. So you can do that in the same way that you would dry anything, right? Which is to put a towel on it. There's lots of lettuce that would be appropriate for a sandwich. Really the goal is to get a little bit of crunch. And this is pretty soft lettuce, so it'll be a very minor crunch. But I like to load on the vegetables with the Sammy, right? Because you need a little salad with your food, but you could put your salad on the food. Okay, now for our condiments, you can use whatever condiments are appropriate to you, but I really like mayonnaise and mustard. And obviously adding mayonnaise is not a healthy thing, but you know, a little bit of mayonnaise goes a long way for what is otherwise a very uninteresting dish. So, you know, if you're gonna make yourself eat a sandwich, you might as well put a little mayo on it. Here I have some whole grain mustard and some mayonnaise, and I like to mix them together. And now we have a sandwich spread. Obviously, there are tons of variations as to what condiments you can use. I'm particularly fond of adding horseradish, because that gives a boring sandwich a little bit of zip. Okay, now here's my bread. Look at that nice brown. It's not burnt, it's just nicely toasted. That means it's toasted. All right, next up, I'm going to prepare the cold cuts. In our case today, we'll be having turkey, probably one of the healthier lunch meats. And when you're buying turkey for sandwiches, I strongly recommend you go to the deli section of the grocery store. Don't buy the pre-packaged shit, because it never tastes as good. But some homie with the deli slicer probably made something better. You can see, here's the obvious problem with this lunch meat. Too big, but you can cut it down to size. And I personally find that if you have a very large lunch meat like this, you can actually create a pretty square placement normally. However, this particular lunch meat is kind of falling apart, so we won't get as aesthetically pleasing of items. So John just asked me about the fold-over, which is what you see marketed, particularly on those pre-packaged meats. That's for extremely thin-cut meats. And I'll also comment that most extremely thin-cut meats are lower quality. They're cut thinner so you don't realize how full of bullshit that they are. But I'm not a fan of the folding thing. I mean, that's essentially a way of making your sandwich look bigger, but it's not, you know. I like everything nice and flat and uniform. Okay, so we have the primary ingredients of our sandwich. Let's assemble. Here's our mayonnaise and mustard mix. I personally like to have enough so that you really know it's there, but not so much that it's gonna come flying up the sandwich. And I like to achieve this essentially by spreading it out and then scraping off the excess. And the excess can go on the other slice of bread. You want a uniform layer, or as close as you can get. All right. Now the order you stack your ingredients on your Sammy, that's up to you. And some people feel very strongly about this. For example, some people really like when the tomato is in contact with the mayonnaise. Other people feel that way about the lettuce. But the way that I normally make it is I start with the cheese, and we're using 2 slices of cheese. I think that's the optimal amount of cheese for a sandwich. Next up, I like to layer the meats, and because we have some pretty scraggly meats, essentially what I'm going to try to do is create a fairly even layer back and forth. Usually it's a little bit more tidy than this, but you know, not possible today. The tomato, it really depends how much you like tomato and also the size of your tomato. But for me today, I'm going to be using 2 slices that I'm going to stack like that. And if you want to really elevate your Sammy, go ahead and salt those tomatoes. This is optional. Also, you need to be careful with this because if you have low quality deli meat, there's a good chance that it's going to be very salty anyways. And in that case, I don't know why you would pair a nice tomato with shitty lunch meat, but be careful in the salt. And for the lettuce, with these particular leaves, I'm going to trim just this bottom piece. And finally, stack the top piece of bread. And here is my my version of a classic, normal sandwich. Okay, now, another point that people feel strongly about is how do you cut a sandwich? How do you cut a sandwich, John?
I don't.
All right then, good talk. Now, here's what I'll tell you. For a normal run-of-the-mill sandwich, I like the aesthetics of the diagonal cut. But I think that diagonal cut is contingent on it being a square sandwich, so that you have more even triangles. If I were to cut this into triangles, I would have two goofy ass looking pieces. So I actually think that a middle cut for this type of sandwich is superior, primarily for actually eating the damn thing. Because if I cut it this way, it's gonna be inaccessible. So here's a center cut, and no sandwich is complete without that cross section. Look how uniform that is, okay? That looks fucking good. That's not a normal sandwich. That's a good sandwich. All right, so when you have a sandwich cut this way, you can present it however you like. It may make sense to present it, you know, like as is, as it was, or you can show off that cross section. Some people like that. All right. Now, what do you serve with the sandwich? Well, a pickle spear goes real nice with the sammy, and some chips, primarily kettle chips. And there you have a sandwich meal fit for my wife and for me, because we do eat this pretty regularly. Was it that exciting to make? No, obviously not. You're watching a video about a sandwich. On the flip side, you know, it looks pretty damn good to me. Like, I am legitimately very happy to eat this. And that may be because I have a simple brain, but you know, it looks like a good Sammy. I'm gonna chow on that and I'm gonna be happy. And also, I've never had a sandwich in this way that made me feel bad. You know, you could eat this and probably feel okay. And that's important. I think that's a significant value proposition of food for adults, is being able to eat it and not feel bad. Okay, let me, Phil, normal person, eat this normal sandwich. It tastes great. I really like this sandwich. I can say with true honesty, I legitimately really like this food. It's not particularly fancy, but it certainly is attainable. And if you get really good at making sandwiches, people will like you. That's my advice. Like, you know, even if you can't cook, and I know like some people watch this show, they've expressed like they're intimidated by cooking. We didn't cook anything. We just made a sandwich. So go make some Sammies. That's our show today. That's how you do it. Sandwiches are okay if you make them good. Okay, bye.